Delighted to have Varian Clinical Application Specialist, Ryan Kelly, to educate us on his favorite feature in ARIA, using Aura to edit and create reports. Before I turn it over to Ryan, I will give you a moment to review the Varian safety slide. And Ryan, you are on.
Great. Thanks, Karen, and welcome, everyone. So let me share my screen so everybody can see this information. Okay, and one more feature I'll turn on. Make this possibly easier for everybody to see it. All right. So at this point, my main goal is to show you a little bit more of what you can do with Aura. Now, I know at this point, everybody's at least experienced Aura somewhat or somehow heard of it. And we know that we can do a lot of features in Aura as far as scheduling reports and making reports and saving them as favorites. But I wanted to get more into the details of how can I simply take a report that I have currently and edit that, or even one step further, how can I create one from scratch and have it be a benefit to my department? So that's the main goal. And what I'm going to do is, instead of wasting time explaining how we can do this, I'm going to grab a report and I open that report up. Now, when I say open a report up, when you look in Aura, you will have the ability next to any of your reports. If you look at this little hyperlink over here that says Edit Report, what that's going to do, and this is regardless if you're in 13.7 or 15, it's going to allow you to click on that edit. It's going to open up Report Builder. And Microsoft Report Builder is nothing more than a tool that we've embedded within our software that we can use. Now, if this is the first time you've ever gone to edit a report or create a new one, the very first thing it's going to do is load Report Builder. It's a 10-second load, and then after that, you log in and you are full capability of Report Builder. So I've gone ahead and I've selected one of these reports just to go ahead and start playing with here. And again, that's exactly what we end up doing. Nobody's going to be an expert with Report Builder right from the start unless you've had some training or experience with it. So it is really just playing with these reports in order to understand how and what I can do with them. Okay? So at this point, I stepped into at that one stage where I've logged into Report Builder and it opens up my report for me. All right? I'm looking at this just in the pure sense of how is it laid out and what data is actually pulling into it. Now, there are some multitude of things I can do without even knowing anything about this. You'll notice the toolbar up top looks awfully familiar to what you'll see in Word or Paint or any of your other Microsoft applications. So by clicking on any of my information in here, my table boxes, I can start editing things up here that will allow me to change their font, I can change their size, I can change the location, I can change colors, and you can see that that all becomes available as soon as I select one of those boxes. Okay. Now, all of your reports, what we've done with Report Builder is we've given you the benefit of Varian went in and created these data models for you. Normally, how a Report Builder or SQL Manager report will be generated is you would start out by first creating your own data set. But that would mean you'd have to know what server you're going to be using, what tables are in that server, and how do those tables relate. Are there foreign keys, primary keys, things that I can tie them together with. So by using our models and by using the reports that we've given you, you already have all that information there for you. You don't have to create a data set. It exists, and multiple exists. So in this one instance, I can see that this report that I'm looking at right now, which just happens to be a patient demographic report, more of something that's pulling in from my registration tab, I can see that I have a patient model that's in my data set. And I can also open this up to see that here's all the bits of information that are from the various tables in ARIA that are pulled into this one data set for me to utilize. Right? Now, these are all patient-related, but on your data side, on the data source, they're not all going to be coming from the same table. So that means that we've gone ahead and done the work and joined the tables for you and brought the information into what we thought is going to be the most beneficial for you to use, in this particular case, the patient side of the data set. So what this means is that this report being built with this data set, anything I see over here is what is populating over here on my report itself, which means that I can replace some of these items, I can delete items out, or I can add some in that are brand new. So there's a different process, and there's many different ways to do things in here. But you'll see that any of these tables I hover over, any of these boxes, they all have this little icon off to the right side. It looks like a little piece of paper with a list on it. Well, that is actually your data set over here. And if you hover over it, it will show you the different pieces of information that I could swap this out with. So if I didn't want patient date of birth here, I could actually come in here and choose any of these other pieces of information and change that information out just as simply by doing this. Okay. I could also, if there's something new I wanted to bring in, you can left mouse click over here on the data set and you can pull it over. And it will actually show you where it's going to drop it. So in this case, it would put it right here if I wanted it to. And you can drop it just to see what it's going to look like. And what it's going to do is it's going to give you the actual information box, but give you a header up above where I can then type in what this is going to be. So if this is something that I want to definitely keep track of and I want to know what column this belongs to, I just type in my header up above. And then that will just populate the header. The information will populate below it. Okay? Now that is some of the more simplistic things you could do by changing out the names of it or dragging it and dropping it over. Now there are some of these reports that we have designed for you have some specifications that were built into them. So what I suggest is if you're going to start doing something like this, and as I've always told customers, try one thing at a time and then run the report, see if you like what it looks like, see if it makes sense, see if it runs, and then move on to the next thing and change that. Okay? Because you will never quite be sure if what you've done is going to make the report go wider or longer or all of a sudden push it to a second page. It could also potentially cause some problems where it's looking for information that you didn't define yet. Okay? So again, it's a one step at a time, and the benefits of the report builder is nothing I do in here is permanent. If I added that in and I decided I ran it, the report looks horrible now, I don't like the layout, I can just come back up here and hit the undo button and just back up through my steps. And that way I know that I always had that fallback. I can add in what I want. If I don't like the way it looks, I just back it up until it runs again and I like it, and then I start again. Okay? Now you'll also notice that there are groups down here. So we have row groups and we have column groups. Now there are going to be some of our reports out there that do have some column groups in them. Okay? That gets a little bit more advanced when you start creating column groups. But I can tell you that row groups are fairly simple in terms of how to add them in there and how you can group your reports. Okay? So you can see, and if you hover over them or if you click on them, you'll highlight the pieces that are associated with this grouping. And if there's any kind of tables that are dependent on that grouping, you will see that as well, which is when I click on this hospital name, you'll see that everything inside that box that kind of correlates with the hospital has some kind of a role or is tied to that particular group. So if I came in here and started deleting out boxes and all of a sudden I saw multiple boxes disappear, well, that is my clue that, okay, that must mean that that grouping encapsulates that particular bit of data. So that way I know that if I'm going to delete out a group, I have to find a way to replace that information that I'm going to be deleting out, which could be as simple as adding in maybe another row or adding another column, which I can do that if I know I want a second row or I want to add in an individual row up here. I'll just highlight the row itself and I'll right click over here, and then I have this option to insert a row. So you can see I can add one above or below. Right? And then I have a row that I can add additional information into. Now what you may see in some of these rows, when I go to insert a new one, there may be the capability of when it says insert row and you click on above or below, it's going to want to know if you want it to be, if you ever see the verbiage inside or outside of the current group. All that means is that, do I want this information or this row that's going to contain new information to be inside the current group or outside of it? And the reason I'd want that to happen, or pardon me, inside the table, the reason I would want that to happen is for me to be able to maybe I don't want all of the same information to repeat every time, which means I might be wanting to import a piece of information and I only want it to show up that one time along with the header. That means that I want to be outside of the group. I don't want it to be part of it. So then I would just insert a row outside of the group and I can enter information and it functions on its own. It's really outside of that group, so you won't see it on every page, or it will not repeat with every event that it pulls over. Okay? Now, some of the other things you can see in these reports, and if you scroll down, and this is one I thought was a perfect case to display because it does have some easy portions of it up top, and then you'll start seeing something down towards the bottom that I wanted to explain. Because you will see these on your main page in Aura, and you'll see them spread through a lot of your reports as well. Anytime you see these variant templates down below with the SR at the end, that stands for sub-report. So that means that these reports, they're actual viable reports that are on your server, but they are not something that's meant to be run by themselves. So if you ever go down and you try to run one of these sub-reports, and usually they're listed under other, you'll usually get a fail. And it'll tell you something along the lines of, this sub-report is not meant to be run outside or by itself. And that's simply because that the way that these are designed, there's not a lot of structure to them. There's no header to them. There's no report name. When you open these up from the server, you'll look at them, and they are basically just pieces of information that they're pulling in. So in this particular template, the radiation oncologist, it is pulling in from a table. It is pulling in probably the oncologist's first name, last name, any kind of honorific, just the simplest things that have to deal with that. But it can't run by itself because it doesn't have any parameters with it. It doesn't have things that you can go in there and define, like a date or a patient ID, that will then pull that information over. So those sub-reports are beneficial, but they're also something that if you wanted to edit these, so if I run this report and I like everything I see in here, but I notice that something in the sub-report I don't like or I want to change, well, then you have to go to the server side in order to change that sub-report. And that involves a little bit more detail because you actually have to log into the server and you have to find the variant templates, and in there you find the sub-report and then you edit that sub-report, which the benefit is the sub-report gets edited in Report Builder just like you're editing this report. So then when you're looking at the sub-report, you can add in parts and pieces, you can change the layout, you can swap what pieces display first or second. So it's not as difficult as you think. It's not like you're going to a separate program completely and doing something 100% foreign. You're still playing in Report Builder. It's just how you access that report is going to be different. Okay? Now, there's also some things when you first come into looking at your Report Builder and the layout. If you go up to View, there's this Properties box. Okay? Now, that's the thing that you see that's on the far right that's open. Now, I will normally turn this on because there's a lot of additional functionality on this property side that you wouldn't see unless you have this on. You could see it, but only if you right-clicked on the box and then you went to Properties, you could see it that way. But this just makes it a lot simpler because now anything I click on over here, maybe I want to look at this home phone table, you can see that it will bring up the properties for that. It'll tell me where it's aligned, so I can see the alignment, the color. I can see if it's got any kind of general information, so the boxes can shrink automatically or can grow automatically depending on what's populating in there. I can also see some information down here as far as the formatting of it. If I wanted to keep it together, which means that I want to try to keep information together instead of having it wrap around on another box or try to push it down. And then the position is also nice to know as well. Now the position really comes into play when I'm looking at sub-reports and things like that. I might need to know my size, especially if I've gone in and edited a sub-report, and then I run that sub-report now inside of my old report, and none of the columns line up anymore. Well, that's because if you've removed some information or added it into a sub-report, you need to make sure that that space that it fits in your main report now is the same size. So you may have to do some editing where you write down the sizes of the corresponding columns out here of where that sub-report falls under, just so I can go into my sub-report and make sure that it's the same width in there and that all of the columns that I have are matching the column width that I have in my main report. It sounds a little daunting, but it's truly not that difficult. it just takes some time to go back and forth and change those. And then you have to save the subreport, and then you have to replace the subreport in here, which really isn't that difficult, because as soon as I've edited the subreport, and a lot of times what we'll do is we'll save it into my reports folder like we do any of our edited reports, which I'll show you here momentarily. But I can right-click on this, and I can go down to my subreport properties, and you will actually, from there, you can swap out and choose your subreport that you want to use. So it'll let you browse for it, and you can insert any subreport you'd like. So it may seem like a daunting task, but it's really not. Okay? And let me go back to this home. So something else you'll have in Report Builder is this insert button. Okay, now not getting too far into here, but just be aware that you have the ability to do multiple things in here, just besides having a straight table or matrix or something like that pull over information. You can see that I have the ability to create charts, gauges, maps, data bars, spark lines for different ways of displaying your data from highs and lows. I can insert a header and footer, and this is where I can also insert a subreport. So that insert gives you a lot of capability of going in here and completely going off-grid with what the report years you want to make. And we'll jump into this a little bit when I show you how to create one from scratch. Right? So when it comes to actually creating this report, let's say you've come in here and you've played with a lot of different things and you run it, so that's the benefit is in here. I can run these reports as I'm developing them. So if I've added in a new piece, I run this report. I see, do I like the report? Is the layout the way I want it to look? And again, when I hit run, it's just like I was in Aura and I'd clicked on the hyperlink to run that report. Now the only thing you won't get from here would be the filters like you'll have in Aura. Okay? The filters stay on the Aura side. This just allows you, again, because we're in the editing of the report, we're editing the layout, we're editing the general information in here. You can still apply the filters once you save this back and posted it into your Aura so that you can use it. But when you're in here and you're running it, you're running just the bare report. You can't filter it in here. You can only see everything that's going to pull over. Okay. So let's say I've gone through and I've done some editing in my report, but now I either need to get back to, treating patients, or it's end of day, I need to go home, or I just want to, take a break from the report and come back and look at it later. Right? Now we all know that when we log into ARIA, it's very much user specific. Right? Well, that follows suit with Aura. When I log into Aura and I go into Report Builder, either create a new report or edit one, it is very important that you log in. You are the one that's logged into ARIA when you actually go to create that report or edit one. Because when I come in here and I've created this report, and now I want to save this report so I can work on it later or possibly publish this report, I'm going to come up to my icon up here. This is just your basic Report Builder icon. I'm going to left mouse click up here, and I'm going to go down to Save As. Okay. Now this is something very common. You'll see this just about 99% of the time. It's going to open this server up, and you think that it'll let you save it right here. But if I try to save my report here, it's going to fail, and it's going to give me an error saying I do not have the rights to save my report here. Well, don't get discouraged because you're not meant to save it here. Everybody who logs into ARIA and who's in Aura will have their very own My Reports folder. So if you back up one level and you come to this My Reports folder, this is where you want to save your reports. Okay? Now the benefit is I save this here, and I'm just going to cancel out because I've already got multiple reports in there, but just for the purpose of showing you, I'm going to close this report down. And I come back in, I hit refresh, and I look at my reports. That report will show up here. Okay? Now this is something that, this report now belongs just to me. Nobody else can see this. They can't try it out. They can't make edits to it because I haven't actually released it yet. It's on my Reports tab. It exists only in my world. Okay? Now, if I want to, I can come in here and I can go back in at any time and I can continue editing that report. It's going to open it right back up. It's going to allow me to continue doing what I was doing. But if I've actually made changes to this and I think it's going to be beneficial to the clinic and I want everybody else to try it out, then I can come right over here to More, And the simple thing I have to do is just click on Publish, and then I choose which category do I want it to be published into. Okay? And then that automatically makes it available for everybody to try. Right? And that's why it's also really important that if you are playing with these reports and you're creating them, that you do not want to come in here and just go up and hit Save. Right? Because there is the possibility you could be saving this as a brand new report that would overwrite the one that's currently there. Or you don't want to actually save it as the same name because you would never be able to tell the difference. So my suggestion is whenever you come in here, even if you want to do this as the first step, you come in here and the very first thing you do is you save this as a new name before you've actually done anything. That way you know for sure you don't have the chance of editing a current report that people might be using. Okay? All right. So that's just some of the things you can do with your basic reports you have. Let's say that that's the case where I'm using a report currently in the clinic, and I notice it's got almost everything I want, but it's maybe missing just one piece of information, or maybe it has too much information and I want to slim it down some. That would be the case where you just edit it in Report Builder and then remove some of the pieces or add in the pieces that you want. Okay? Now there's also the chance, and let me jump back into this one real quick. There's also the chance that you might have a report that you like, but it truly just doesn't have everything you want. Okay? So let me show you in this case. I've got that patient chart report again. And I'm going to edit that one. Because I did tell you that your reports are all built off from data sets. So this report is built using this one data set. Okay? Well, let's say there's the instance where this data set doesn't have everything I want in there. Okay? Well, no problem. If I right-click over here on my data set, I can add a new data set. And then the benefit here is that these are all under a shared data set. So I can come down to Browse, and I'm going to browse to the variant template, and then I'm going to look under my models. Okay. And here are all the models that Varian went ahead and created for you. Now there's a workbook on my Varian as well that will tell you, I believe it's the Aura workbook. In there you can see what information is in these models. So if you're looking for one specific piece, you don't have to go and add them into your report one at a time and then be able to open the data set on the left side to see what's in them. You can refer to that Aura workbook to see that. But all these different models have a lot of different information that I can pull in. So for instance, let me pull in this activity model just so you can get a better understanding of what it looks like. And when I'm pulling these in, all I have to do is select one, hit open, and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to name it. Now the reason I'm going to name it is just because if I don't, everything's going to come through as a default of data set 1. And that doesn't really benefit anybody because I can't actually change anything in that case. Or I don't know what I'm referring to in that case. So I'm going to swipe over this and call this activity. Unless it won't let me. Well, it'll be data set 1 it will be. Looks like my VMware wants to act up on me right now. Let's try that again. There's my activity model, and I'm going to leave it data set 1. There you go. So just bear in mind that this would be activity. Okay. Now, I've added in a second data set. That's great. I've got all this additional information that I can use. The problem is, and you'll see this real quick, if I try to left mouse click and drag and drop one of these pieces in, I'm going to get an error. Okay? Now, the reason I get this error is because the report can only be built, or at least this particular table that I'm in, can only be built using one data model. Okay? And when I say table, you'll see that when I'm clicked anywhere in here, I get this table that shows up around it, the tablix. Okay? So anywhere in this tablix, I'm restricted to using only that patient data set. Or at least I am when I want to drag and drop. Okay? And you can see that when I have the tablix highlighted over here, it'll tell you I'm looking at the tablix, it's using the data set name patient. Okay? Now there's two ways I can go around this. I can, if I want, if this is a report where maybe I'm going to have one set of information up top and then some verbiage in the middle and then some more information down below. And I think of this like the lines of maybe a consent, where I might have the patient's information up top, and then I might have the consent verbiage in the middle, and then down below maybe I want it to display their treatment times or their treatment dates. Then I could actually include two different tables, and both of those tables could refer to different data sets. And then there's no problem. I could have one table up here that's built off from the patient, and another table down below that's built off from the activity, and then I can just drag and drop them as I want. Okay? What becomes really important whenever I'm trying to combine data sets like this in here, or if I was even trying to write a query that would combine data sets, this is where we have to have something in common in the two different models. Okay? And if you've had any experience with database or relational databases, then you'll know that that's where we're talking about primary keys or foreign keys. It's what the two tables have in relation to each other that allows me to tell them that they're related so that I can pull the information together. Okay? So I can still add this information in, but I have to be a little bit different about it if I want to include this information in the same table as the patient information. And that means instead of just coming over here and grabbing it and dragging it in, I have to actually write an expression. Okay? So if I right-click in the box, I can come down to expression, and then I can come in here and I can delete this out. Okay? I'm just going to get rid of this because we know that that's going to be replaced. Okay. Now what this is, and you can see this is a basic expression box that comes up. You'll see this anywhere when I'm inside a report builder trying to write conditional statements and things. If I come down to my common functions and I go to miscellaneous, there is this one very essential item that we can use. It's called the lookup. Now the benefit is on the right side it tells you what the lookup does, and it gives you an example down below of how it's supposed to look. Okay? So I start out, and now I could type it directly in here if I wanted to, but I choose to come through and I just double click on it. I'll clean it up afterwards. So if I choose lookup, it automatically populates that up top, and now I go to my data sets, right? And remember the first thing I told you is that whenever I have two different data sets and I'm trying to use them in the same table, I have to find something that is relatable between the two. Now a lot of our models share items, and it could be patient ID, it could be patient serial number. There's just certain things you have to find it, okay? So I'm going to go on the assumption that this one has patient ID. So I'm going to drop that in there. Now activity has patient ID as well, okay? So what I've done right here is I've just told the system that these two separate tables are relatable because of that patient ID, okay? It's almost like, actually it's exactly like if I go in and writing a query in SQL and I say I'm going to do an inner join. I have to tell the system what relates that I can join these two fields. There has to be something there that they relate to. Okay? So I've got this together, so now the system knows that I've joined these two tables. Great. Now I can go in and say, okay, that's how they relate, and I want to pull in, maybe I want the activity category to come in. Oop, and I didn't want it twice. No biggie. I can swipe over this and change it. Okay. And then I have to actually get rid of this as well. Okay. So that's what the result is going to look like if I was just to go through and click on these items as I go. Now there is going to be some required things that I have to clean up out of here. Okay. And these being that it's just extra pieces that I don't need. So let me show you what this is going to look like when I finish. And remember, you can type this in if you want to. Now, I just do this for the sake of, I know at this point what I'm deleting out. And I've done this enough times that I know what these are supposed to look like, and I think I can get them done a little bit faster if I just double click on things. Okay. Okay. And that right there is your lookup value to be able to pull in the activity category into this current data set, into this table. Now the benefit to this, once you've got this done and it's working, so again, I would hit OK here. I would make sure that this report runs and it pulls in this piece of information. Once I confirm that it's running, great. I just gave myself the golden ticket that I can use over and over and over to pull in anything from that second data set into this one table without really having to know how that's supposed to look again. Because I'll copy it and I'll paste it into my next box, and the only thing I'll delete out would be this last piece, this field activity category value data set 1. I'll delete that out. I'll come down to the data set that I want and choose the next thing that I want in there and double click on that, and that will populate that end piece again. So you basically can reuse this piece of script over and over to pull that information together. Now you can do this even if I had a third data set in here. Just remember that you have to know which one, what's your primary data set, in this case it'd be patient, and if they have a value that they share. So if it's patient ID or patient serial number, I do the same thing. I'll grab patient ID from patient, I'll grab patient ID from the other table I have, and then once I've got that established, I just grab out of that new data set what the information I want. Okay? So that's why it doesn't matter if I've got 2 or 3 different data sets in there. You can use them. Okay? So this is all how we can edit a current report. Okay? That's great. This is something that you can come in right from the scratch and you can start playing around with any of the reports you currently have without the ramifications of, oh, I just changed my report and I can't go back to the old one. No, that's not true. As long as I say this is a different name, I haven't done anything with my main set of reports. Okay? So let me close this one and let me go in another route. Let me go in the route that you would see if I wanted to create my own. And this gets a little bit more complicated. Not so much complicated as it gives you a lot more options where you can stutter along the way. So if I click on Create New Report, now the first thing I'm going to see that comes up is, again, options. Okay. Now I have options from here, and the good thing is this is like a Windows GUI. Everything here is just click on it and move through it. Double click and go. So if I want a new report, now I can go through a table or matrix wizard, and this allows you to basically choose your data set or your model, and then from there you choose the way you want it to lay it out. And just so you can see, I'm going to continue, just so you can see what it's going to look like, I'm going to choose this model and hit next. Okay. Now if I didn't have a data set here that I've already used, and you'll start seeing your data sets populate here the more you start playing with Report Builder. It remembers the models you've used or the data sets you've used before, so you don't have to go back and browse. Okay? But remember, if you wanted to, you could come back here and browse back to the template and then back to your models, and there's all your different models. But because I'm using one that I've currently used, I don't have to go that step. I can just highlight the one I want, go to my next tab, and then here, this is where I get to choose what do I want it to look like. Like, how do I want things to be laid out? Okay, maybe I want this to be like my column up top. I want to have activity name up there. Okay, that's reasonable. And then maybe down to the side here, I want my start date and time. I could want my priority. Okay, and maybe my values might be something along the lines of patient ID or patient ID 2 or something along those lines. Oop, I didn't mean to do that. Let me back that up. Yeah. Easy enough. Patient ID. It's going to want to pull in certain information. Well, all right, let's try this. Let's just try pulling one of these over for now. There we go. We'll leave it like that. Okay. So you get some flexibility of what you want to arrange here, and this is just quickly grabbing a few items and dropping them in. But now I can move it to the next screen. Oh, it must have an aggregate function. All right. Let me back up here because it's not liking what I dropped in that one. Let's choose the patient model. And let's do something like this one. Now, I don't really have in here the information that it's going to want. as far as normally your sum will be if you think along the lines of maybe a patient order, like the number of orders I had or the number of visits, that would be what you'd pull into your piece there. Now the next screen that comes up shows you a preview of what your report's going to look like. Now you have some options where I can choose to have the subtotals and grand totals shown or blocked or stepped, or I can just turn them off just so it actually shows the information here. And then in the next box, I can say, okay, now what style do I want? And you've got different styles you can choose from of how you want this to look. Right? It's completely up to you. And then I go to finish. Okay. Now this just gives me, this is the layout of the report. So you can see it stepped me right in here. Here's my data set. Okay, so I now use the patient model, and this is the layout. So now what I can do is I can run this report and try it out, see if I like it. Okay, is this what I want to have in here? Is this how I want it to be displayed? Do I want to have it to be able to be opened up or drop down or have a display off the side like this? This is just a starting point. Okay? But at least it gets you going in the right direction. At least I know that I have my different information all displayed here, and then if I don't like the way it's displayed, I can start manipulating the report. Right? So that's just one way to go in and start doing a report. Okay? Now the other thing I can do, and I'm not going to save that one for the sake of, I'll probably recreate that report multiple times. Now the other thing you can do is you can just go completely off script and write a report that is completely blank. Here we go. All right? So again, you have the chart wizard, the map wizard, or blank report. Now blank report is just that. I have to choose my data set, I have to add in my table, I have to choose what's going to go where. But sometimes it's a little bit easier to start from a blank report because you're not changing anything that came through one of the wizards. Okay? So on a blank report, that's exactly what it is. Now when I come in here, I'm going to cancel that piece because I want you to see this is it. There's nothing there. There's no data set, there's no parameters, there's no layout. Okay? So I actually have to figure out exactly how am I going to want this to be displayed. What's my layout? Okay? Now the easiest thing to do is just come up here under Insert and go into Table. And there's that table wizard again where you could go that route. But I'm going to choose to go down to my Insert Table. And then I'm going to come down here and left mouse click and drag a box. Okay? Now this is very standard. It always gives you the 3 columns. And the very next thing it's going to do is because there cannot be a report written that does not have a data set. It's going to open this box because it knows, okay, you haven't chosen a data set yet. So we have to choose one. Okay? So if I come in here, and let's say I'm going to choose my patient model again. Okay, I hit OK. Now I've got in my data set, and you can see now that it's labeled everything as header, and here's my data row. Right? Now remember I said that you could start dragging things right in here. So if I wanted to, I could start populating this immediately just by left mouse clicking and dragging information over. Now by doing it this way, it automatically populates your header and it populates your patient full name data row down below. So it's not something that you have to really even worry about. It's automatically going to populate those for you. So then maybe I want the type, and again, this is all just, I'm just grabbing random items here. Okay, and my city, sure. Now keep in mind, at this point, every model that you bring in has certain parameters that come with it. Okay? And this is going to be what pops up that you have to put in order to get the report to run. And right now, when this comes in, they're all set to null, which means that in this patient ID parameter, when I right-click over here and I look at the properties, I can see that it has the ability to accept a null value, which is great, which means that when I hit Run Report, it's going to go through and pull in every patient in my system and show me the information I'm looking for. Now that may or may not be what you want, but it is what it will allow you to do. Okay? Now I can, just because it says it'll allow a null value, I can decide to disregard that. So when I go to run this report, granted it's going to initially run and pull all that information over, But that doesn't mean I can't come up here and say, well, okay, I actually want this patient ID number to populate. And then when I type in that number and view the report, that's going to be what I see. Okay? So you have some options with that. Now, these are just some parameters that we've given you with the models. Now, if you were to go off script and create your own data set, you would have to choose what you want for your parameters as well. Okay? Now, just because we have parameters that are already in here doesn't mean you cannot go ahead and create your own parameters. It's a little bit more difficult to add in parameters than it is just to grab another data set. But be aware that there is that capability of doing it. Okay? And just like if I don't want to see them, I can come up here, because you will notice that some of these reports you pull in, they have 5 or 6 different parameters. And maybe all I want to do is put in a date range. Okay, well, I can hide all the other ones. And you can do that by coming right in here and just saying, okay, this parameter is now hidden. And then when I go to run this report, it is just that. I will no longer see that serial number 1. Okay, so I can get rid of everything except for the patient ID. Right? So now, just so you can see what can happen, if I pull in a second data set, and let's say I'm creating this report, I'm going to pull in my second data set here, and I wanted to be able to pull this information in. Now, I know, because we already talked about that I can do this all in the same table if I use a lookup value. But if I wanted to do a separate box and not have them correlated or not have to worry about using lookup values, then I could drag another box over here. And then I could come over here when I've got this selected. I've got the table selected. And I could come over here to the side and I could choose my data set name over here. There's that drop down into the properties section. And I can say I want this one to be data set 2. So now I can go ahead and grab this one and pull this over with that information. Okay, and no problems pulling it and dragging and dropping. Right? Now, obviously, this might not be the scenario you would want to do this in, because this would definitely pull in different information. It wouldn't necessarily match up. But just so you can see that you can have different tables on the same report pulling from different data sets and not having to use lookup value. Okay? Now, you'll also notice that what happened right up here, my parameters more than doubled. Okay? Now, if I don't address this, look what happens when I go to run. Look at all the other parameters I have in here. Okay? Now, this could be a nightmare. There might be things in here I don't want people to see, or I don't want to give them the ability to fill in because it could cause my report to be so much more taxing on the system when I try to run it. Okay? So what you can do is there are certain languages that these shortcuts we use a lot in the system in order to get these to work. So if you go down to the data set and you right-click on it, and we're going to go to the data set properties, I can go to the parameters for each data set. Now remember, these are the ones that just pulled over with this new data set. And they are set up so that they will function if I want them to. If I turn off that null box, I can type in the patient serial number or the type or the start date, end date in order to get them to work. But if I don't want them to cause a problem with the report that I currently have, like in the case of I'm editing an existing report and I've added in a new data set, and I don't want the report to change, and I don't want to have people put in new query values or parameter values in order for it to run correctly, then I will come in and change this value that it's looking for. And this is something that you'll use over and over and over. So again, once you've used it, you can always copy it and use it again. Okay, and this is something that we use a lot in here. Oop, and that's not it. Is it going to let me type it in? Okay. Let me try having that in one more time. Okay, I'm going to have to try running it and backing out here. And this isn't a design of Report Builder. This isn't something that you'll see with Report Builder. It's just something that happens in our test systems sometimes where all of a sudden stops taking input from your keyboard. Let me try this one more time. And if it doesn't, I'll just explain what we end up doing. because it's definitely not something that is difficult. It's just something that's required. Yeah, it's blocking me. Okay, so the basic language that we'd end up typing in here is system.db null value. And all that's doing is that's telling the system, it's telling the report, when I go to run this report, disregard that parameter. I want you to just pass a null value to it and not require anything to be in there. So in the case of where I added this in as a second data set, that's exactly what I want us to do. Because if it's something that all I have to do is go in and put in an end date and a start date, and then the report populates fine, I don't want to mess it up by adding in another parameter that now someone needs to know a patient ID, or I don't want to limit my report down to patient specificity. So I want to make sure that those parameters are set so that they get bypassed. And that's where that system DB null value comes in. It's just a basic parameter that you use. You can find it in any website lookup. It'll tell you exactly how to type it in there. Unfortunately, it's just not letting me do that here. But what I would end up doing is I would put that in for all of these, except for the last one. The user ID one, you can leave because it's not going to do anything different. You can have it pass the user ID parameter, the one who's running the report. That's not going to cause any additional work. And it's not going to cause the report to bog down at all because it's already pulling it for the original parameter set. So you're fine in that case. Okay? So as you can see in here, I can pull in my different activities I want, my different patient information I want. I can click to add my title. I can begin to add color and format this to however I want it to lay out. I can add information into my footer, and that's where you get these built-in fields up here. So the benefit is I have a footer already in a lot of these. So if I just come in here, maybe I want to pull in some of these. Maybe I want my report, my page number. Okay? Again, this is a left mouse click and drag it down in the footer, and it automatically creates a rectangle box for you. And then I just have to drag it over where I want it and line it up. Okay? And the benefit is it'll give you the lines here of where it's going to populate. So there, now I've got the page number populating in there. Okay? So those built-in fields are something that you can just pull in as much as you want in that footer. So if you wanted the execution time, the report name down there, the total pages, you could do that. And a lot of them are already going to have the execution time down here and maybe a little variant logo down there as well. But those are some things that you can play with. Now the other thing that I always like to mention is that when it comes to reports, you'll notice that there's a lot of repetitiveness in our reports, which means that I run the report and I might have the header comes through with patient name, patient ID, their activity date, department, hospital, and it repeats every entry. And that's all because it's in the same tablix. And those tablix are meant to repeat like that, especially if it's built in the header. And a lot of our reports are built in the header, or at least to have a good portion of it in there. If it's something where I don't want it to repeat every single entry for every patient or for every page, then I have to make sure it's out of the header. Okay, so that means that when I'm looking at the report, I always try to look at it first when I run it and see, is this something that's repeating every single entry? Oh, okay, it is. If I don't want that, then I move that column or I move those rows out of the header and I recreate them below it. Okay? And that's how you can change the look of a report dramatically. So instead of having all this information in between every row, all of a sudden your report goes to just one header up top, the column header, and then down below is just a list of all your information, which some people like, especially when you're trying to do some kind of an audit and you don't want to have to skip down over all the column headers every time in order to look at that. So that is just some of the other things you can do with that. Okay, and I think I'm getting up on my 30 minutes here. So hopefully I've answered a lot of questions. Again, the whole goal of this is just to kind of give you a little bit more of the ability and the capability and the want to go in and start playing in these reports, because honestly you can create some amazing reports in here with just a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of ability to play. And that's a great way to learn the system as well. So at that point, are there questions, I guess, Karen?
All right. Well, thank you, Ryan, for a great presentation.